We're here on a mission. Call it in, call it in, call it in.
You are listening to Navigating Towards the New Earth with Mel M. Rubin. Wow, what a fantastic episode this is, and you are going to be blessed to listen to. So in this episode, I'm speaking with Harrison Ma. He is a cosmic love coach and host of the Cosmic Love Antenna. He supports his collective through mind, body and soul synchronizing, and let me tell you, this brother is an absolute beautiful soul. This conversation had me having goosebumps all over for the majority of it, and we go into a range of different subjects covering spirituality, the divine feminine, the unhealthy masculine world that we've been brought up in, really connecting to the soul, really understanding who it is that we are, and much, much more. I'm very, very excited to introduce you to this episode and to this beautiful man. Enjoy. Okay, so Harrison, what I really want to start with as the nitty-gritty to start off this episode is your story. Where did you come from, and what has really sparked the trajectory of your life going in this direction as a New Earth leader?
So I get asked this question a lot, as most, I think, New Earth leaders, as you call it, do as they step into their power and their gifts and all their beautiful awakenings. And it's funny, when you ask it each time, it brings up something new. So if you'd asked me this a month ago, 2 months ago, I would have answered with the following: that I grew up as a very sensitive little boy that was very connected to his divine feminine, connected to his emotions, his feelings, all of his beautiful gifts and a lot of his spiritual essence, to be very frank, and then shut it down and then pushed it down because the world that he grew up in was telling him that as a boy, you're not meant to express your feelings, your emotions, your sensitivities, your feminine essence. So that's how I would have answered the question. And that's all very true and a big part of my story. How I answer it now in this moment when you ask me, I came from something further back. And because I know this is your show and this is your podcast that you're birthing, when I say further back, in the work that I've done with past lives and my own ancestral line, there are a lot of, how should I say, galactic and celestial history behind me. And without going too deep into what all that means, I'll just say, as I've started to awaken to more and more of my gifts that I now share in my coaching, in my podcast, in my books, a lot of those old teachings, starseed remembrances, have started coming forth. And a lot of that came from my work as a boy. I had that, all those sensitivities suppressed and the pain that was created. A lot of that came out from as an adult when I was had a very traumatic experience where I was detained and deported, and a lot of my adolescent frolicking around the world was taken away from me very quickly due to a traumatic event. And then I would say, as a coach and a healer now, a lot of my lessons come from the beautiful people that come into my world. So just to land all that together, it's a combination of a lot of inner child pain, a lot of adolescent teachings of the pain teacher, and a lot of ancient celestial gifts that are coming together to make me who I am in this moment.
Wow. Thank you so much for that share. It's absolutely fantastic. And I actually had goosebumps as you were sharing the start in respects to you being connected to your divine feminine, which is essentially the spiritual essence of all of us. Like, we all have it within us, but unfortunately the world that we have been brought up in has disconnected us so much from it that it's leaning more so within the masculine, but not the divine masculine, the unhealthy masculine. So can we go into more of a deepening into your experience with that and being brought
Yeah.
up in the unhealthy masculine world that we all have been when you were so naturally in your divine feminine?
Hmm. So, do you want me to speak about the suppression of it and what that looked like and what that led to? Or do you want me to speak about how it felt moving through it and what it birthed?
Let's go with both. Let's go with like
Okay.
your intuitive feeling of what
Yeah.
wishes to come through you right now.
So a lot of the work that I currently do, I attract a lot of males. And it's not surprising that those males look for this very understanding of starting to activate their divine feminine. And I've analyzed this and felt into this in many ways is because of that upbringing that I've had of living in a world as a little boy that wanted very deeply to express that beautiful divine feminine, as you called it. But due to, I grew up in a Catholic culture, religious Catholic culture, due to the media, due to a lot of, social media that was starting to birth, it teaches men that if you go to express that divine feminine, then you are weak or you are less than. Or as a roadblock that I ran into, if you express that divine feminine, you won't attract in a partner. You won't attract in my case, being heterosexual male, you won't attract in a female lover because you're too feminine, right? You're too sensitive. So for me, it led to a lot of suppression, just put very simply. It led to a lot of blocking and ignoring. And it was only very recently in my awakening that I came to the understanding that this is a part of our polarity. This is a part of, I call it your love antenna. Many people call it your cosmic heart or your spiritual essence, as you said. It's just one side of the same coin that we all are. And the degree in which, and this is what I'm seeing now in my life currently, the degree in which we suppress all these things, they don't go away, right? They come out as disease, right? They come out as disease across your mental, physical, and emotional expression. And they display this disease displays itself in your relationships. So just to land here, I see it a lot now currently in my adult relationships. I see these old patterns that I suppressed now turning into karmic, if you want to call them karmic bonds that want to be seen. So that's really what comes up.
Wow. Wow. And I keep going back to this divine feminine because as we're talking about it and as I'm listening to you, I keep getting goosebumps. And whenever I get goosebumps, it's like truth chills. This gets to be spoken about. So I really feel like this
Um,
is a good thing to discuss right now, especially with what we're going through in the world when it comes to the shift in humanity, in really learning how to embody our divine feminine.
mm,
And it's not just the male populace, it's also the female populace because of the patriarchy and women
yeah,
getting to catch up to men, especially in the corporate world and working world. We've had to essentially show the men that we are as good as and really like
mm,
embody the masculine within us and forget about the feminine and really landing into our true gifts as women when it
yeah,
comes to our cyclic energies on the monthly basis, when it comes to our moon cycle, and especially with men as well, where you mentioned how they have been trained that if they lean into their feminine and their emotions and their vulnerabilities and all of the good stuff that comes with the feminine, they're taught that they are weak, when in actual fact this is what women are looking for. Not only are women looking to be held by the divine healthy masculine, they are also looking to also feel safe in his divine feminine when it comes to
yeah,
sharing the emotions. But then on the other side of that coin, women also get to learn how to hold the man in his divine
yeah,
feminine, because women are like, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, like make me feel safe when it comes to my emotions. But then when the man starts crying, and I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying
Yeah.
this, when the
Yeah.
man starts crying and sharing his divinity and his femininity, the woman's like,
Mm.
no, no. And it's just
Yeah.
like, we've been trained. It really goes really deep within our conditioning to not accept it, when in actuality that's where everyone's power is in
Yeah.
the feminine, is in the emotions, because in the feminine, that's our true kind of spiritual side of things. That's where we create our
Yeah.
reality, and also that's where we receive. So I share this because I mean that's my perspective on everything, and I'd
Yeah.
really love to understand your perspective as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll lovingly I'll lovingly push back against one of the things you said. And I think this comes from the lack of experience and understanding that we all have with this, like you said, because the divine feminine has been suppressed in an unhealthy way for so long, we don't know what the healthy balance looks like. And you said something, you said the power comes from the divine feminine, and the power comes from the receiving and the activating of this feminine essence. And the slight change I would say is the power comes from the harmony of both, right? I think the problem I have with the patriarchy understanding is not that women are being suppressed and that the divine feminine is being suppressed. Of course, that needs to come back into the light. But I think what we are in danger of is because we're so aware now. We're becoming aware, like this beautiful show and the work that I do, we're highlighting the need for the divine feminine. The danger is that we now go to the other side, right? We become too much in the divine feminine, and now we've suppressed the beautiful divine masculine. So I think the understanding here is we don't want too much of either, right? We want the beautiful harmony of the divine masculine and divine feminine. How I would describe it is you think of the yin and the yang symbol, right? And you think of that beautiful line in between the two. You want to be walking that line, right? You don't want to be only in the black. You don't want to be only in the white. You want to, as much as you can, and this is where true magnetization and attraction comes in. When you're walking that line between the beautiful balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine.
I love that. Thank you for that loving pushback and your perspective on that, because it really does hit the nail on the head. Because we do get seasons within our lives where it suits to fall more into the
Mm,
feminine and to fall more into the art of surrender and receiving
yeah,
and the connection. But then there's seasons in our life where it suits to be
yeah,
more like, all right, let's go. We get to do this. And that's also like a really big part of the manifestation process as well, in which many people tend to forget in their teachings. It's like, oh yes, sit there and do the affirmations and do this and do that, and then they forget
yeah.
about the action part of it, which is a very
Yes.
which is the masculine part of it
So
too.
important. So important. I spoke about star seeds at the start of this chat in my introduction, right? And that's that's what I see a lot in the star seed, celestial, very spiritually awake community. That's beautiful. I love being a part of, but they stay in the starry heights, right? They stay, yeah, I call it the monk on the mountain syndrome, right? You stay getting all the beautiful, intuitive, divine feminine downloads, but then you aren't coming back into this 3D reality and manifesting it through your divine action.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not an or game here, it's an and game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And what I've personally realized throughout my journey is like, and specifically like observing the old paradigm way of doing, where they're very much in their masculine, and it's like, work hard, you have to do this, like keep working, keep working, keep working. And I've personally found throughout my journey and my experience of learning how to balance the two is the masculine part of the doing is really important, but once we really learn how to lean into the feminine and have those downloads and those intuitive calls and play and have fun and raise our vibration and all of that stuff, the doing is very important. However, the doing isn't as much as what they talk about in the old paradigm way of thinking. So what has your experience been with that?
I mean, the word that comes up is awareness, right? The word that comes up is because the masculine is so burnt out. Right? I want to go back to what I was talking about with my inner child stuff, with my the suppression of the divine feminine. Because I didn't have the divine feminine, I was only in the masculine and I was only in the doing. And it led to a limiting belief that I often catch myself still in is I am not worthy, I am not enough, I am not divine, I am not valuable unless I'm doing the things, right? Unless I'm getting stuff done, unless I'm ticking the boxes. And this is the unhealthy masculine, right? This is what you're saying. This is the masculine that's been pushed too much into not just the red, but as an unhealthy metric of our worth, right? And because the divine, another way of describing the divine masculine and divine feminine, other than the yin and the yang, is I call it the heart of God, right? We're all God. We're all the presence of God. We have the heart of God inside of us. And the heart of God has two sides, right? The masculine and the feminine. Both sides are God, right? So what does that mean to this limiting belief? It means that whether I'm in the masculine doing or I'm in the feminine, as you said, receiving, the being, the stillness, I'm still God. I'm still worthy. I'm still enough. So that's really how I balance the masculine when I get into the unhealthy realms of it.
Amazing. I love that. And I'd love to go deeper into your thoughts and feelings about us all being God, because I'm very much on that same page, but I'm sure that there are some listeners that are like, what are you talking about, God? I'm not God. So yeah, I'd really love for you to expand on that, specifically more so for our listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we could do a whole podcast just on this question. And I have on my show, I've done a couple episodes just on this little sentence of, I've often referred to it as, you're not separate, right? You're not separate to God. So that sentence of we're all God also connects to my childhood, right? I mentioned before that I grew up in a Catholic religious upbringing. And for all the people listening that have had similar upbringings or have grown up in some sort of religious culture or family or group, all of the Abrahamic religions hold this same limiting belief that I am here and the higher power is there, is in a space and place outside of me. And this is so significant to see, because if you hold this belief, if you hold the belief that your higher power, your power, full stop, is outside of you, then every interaction that you have in your life is going to be appealing towards that gap, whether you are unconscious, whether you are conscious to it or not, right? I just spoke before about the unhealthy masculine of doing the things, ticking the boxes to get the stuff done. Often in my experience, both with myself and clients, when I've stripped away all of the layers of why they are doing that, why they think they need to do all the things to be enough, it's because they have the limiting belief that their higher power is outside of them. So it's when you're listening to this podcast and maybe you didn't grow up religious and you're saying, oh, I don't have to worry about that. I would seriously ask yourself that question again, because even if you didn't grow up in a religious school or culture or country, there's a very high likelihood that it still exists inside of you, because it's intergenerationally. It's deep within most of us. This last thing I'll say here, it's often referred to as your imago Dei, right? And it's relationship to higher power. It's your archetype to your power. And you can test it by simply asking a question to yourself. Is my higher power inside of me, or is my higher power outside of me?
And as you say that, my soul's like, it's inside of me, just
Yeah.
like into me. And it's interesting that you say that, like, giving our power away to a higher power, and how you refer to people who aren't necessarily in the religious sect, because we are trained from day dot to give our power away. So whether or not we are religious or not, like, we give our power away as soon as we're put into school, as soon as we're taught to be in a
Yes.
box, and as soon as we're
Yeah.
told to stay in line by teachers and all of that. And that's a really big part of my work also, is like learning how to bring our power back to us, because we
Yes.
are in full control. And when I first started my journey, I was atheist for so long, and then I was like, well,
Hmm.
I'm agnostic, because like there clearly is a higher power. I just don't know where it comes from. I haven't got any answers, so I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want to put any thinking in that. And then the first two books I read on my journey were The Magic by Rhonda Byrne and A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which really made things make sense to me in a logical sense of like science and the laws of the universe and all of that stuff. So I started practicing the laws of the universe, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going through that, I was like, okay, well, this works. And that's when I started my spiritual journey and like believing in the universe. And for a long time, I would refer to the higher power source as either that or the universe or infinite
Yeah.
intelligence, because to me that felt better in my body. And it's
Yeah.
only recently been over this year that I've become more comfortable in the word God and saying
Yeah.
God. And it's yeah, like it. I just feel much more comfortable with it, and more things have been coming into my field, should we say, in
Mm.
respects to information about God and metaphysics and Christ consciousness, and how we all have it within
Mm.
us, and how religion is set up in a way to control us, to say, okay, well, you're here, for you to get to God, you need to come here in the building
Yeah.
and donate money to us so you can get to God and
Yeah.
get everything from God. So coming from your background of Catholicism, like, how do
Yeah.
you feel about that whole structure?
Oh, I love this conversation, my friend. There's so many angles and ways that we could take this. So, put simply, how I feel about it is it's not the religion's fault. And I'll explain what I mean by that. It's so easy for us, and I had a very similar path to you in terms of I was started off Catholic and then I became atheist, and now I'm very spiritually connected and connected to a higher power. My higher power is love in many ways. But what I came to understand as my locus of power changed, right? As my locus transferred from the external back into the remembering of the internal, and I looked back at the religious institutions and groups and paradigms, I saw something very significant. And I saw that in all of the world's religions, if you take away all of the fear, which I'll get to in a second, they're all saying the same thing, right? You spoke about Christ consciousness, right? If you look at Jesus and the real teachings of Jesus, a really good book for people listening is I think it's called The Third Jesus by Deepak Chopra, and he explains how there's three versions of Jesus. There's the man that was Jesus. There's the Catholic dogma that was created around the man that was Jesus, and there is Jesus who awakened Christ consciousness, or the God divinity inside of him. So what I'm saying here is religion isn't the problem. Each of the world religions, in my experience, has this beautiful mystical foundation that we have been talking about already. That I'm not special. All the mystics were speaking that I'm not special. the answer that I've awakened, you can too, because if I'm God, you're God. But the problem is that along the way, along the evolution of all these religions, man and its fear seeped in and added in what I call fear consciousness and fear dogma to all of the world religions. So, me as a little boy, you as a little girl, many people listening, walk into these institutions that with the hope of connecting to the mystical foundations, but they're overwhelmed by all of the fear, all of the separation that is there to continue the separation, to continue the what I would call the restructuring of power, right? Giving our power to these groups of people. But it's not the religion, it's the teachings of these people that are causing the separation.
I love that. I love that. And adding on to the separation, there's a video that I watched recently, and it explains how the book of the Bible is written to separate us from
Yeah.
our power within us, to kind of conceptualize it in that way.
Mm.
And I can't specifically remember the parts of it, but basically the way that it talks about our power and how in control of our reality that we are and how connected
Yeah.
we are. It's
Yeah.
spoken about in the book, but as separate subjects and
Yeah.
separate things. So are you able to expand on that? Have you got any knowledge around that?
Not too much knowledge on that specific example,
Yeah.
but what it brings up in me is, just from
Just from a
a Bible perspective, there's not one Bible. There's there's not one Bible version. So people listening to this and resonating with what you're saying about it, and like, oh, is that true? But my Bible says something different. All those people, what I would say to you with love is, which version of the Bible are you reading? Right? As just another example, there is a sect of Christianity and Catholicism, Christianity called Gnostics, the Gnostic Christianity group, right? And the Gnostic Christianity group have their own version of the Bible that have teachings similar to what we're talking about of, coming back to your own inner power, coming back to your own Christ consciousness. So, I can't speak to your specific example, but I can encourage people listening that if you are still under the old paradigm of any religion, but let's just keep it in Christianity, that God is outside of you based off the text that you're reading, I would encourage you and let you know that there's other texts out there, right? And that you just need to go looking for it.
And the way that I personally connected with the God or goddess inside of me in respects to uh, how I am so in control of the creation of my reality is the understanding of the laws of the universe. And through this understanding of the
Mm,
law, all of the laws of the universe, how they work in conjunction with one another and how they create my reality, like they're
yeah.
working even if we're conscious or unconscious to it. And typically we're
Yeah.
unconscious to it, and because we're unconscious to it and we don't know how to control our mind, the
Yeah.
law, the universe tends to be working against us, because
Yeah.
typically we're working against ourselves. So then once I started to really understand that and working with
Mm,
the laws of the universe to create my reality, I've been able to shift from my own hell on earth, because
yeah.
we either choose to create our hell on earth or our heaven on earth. But I've been able to shift from my own hell on earth to my own heaven on earth, and this is available for everyone because this is
Yeah.
how powerful we are.
Yeah. I want to pull out one of the things you said. You said shifting from the world outside of me is against me, or the universe is against me. And with all the love in the world for people listening, that's impossible, right? The universe can't be against you because the universe is you, right? Another way of saying this is, one of my teachings is, God is either nothing or everything. And I prescribe to the latter. So if God is everything, Nothing outside of you can be against you because it is you. What it is doing, though, and this is what you highlighted, I want to just expand on it more. It's reflecting our current state of consciousness, right? And this is so important for people to understand. This is where, so in my journey, I traveled down the Vedic perspective to help me come back to my truth. And the Vedic teaching is that not only is everything God and everything is us, but there is no objective outside reality. There is just our inner reality that we project through our current state of awareness or our current state of consciousness. And that consciousness, as you beautifully highlighted, is created from our light and this is the important part, from our shadows. So all the people that are out there saying, I'm not a creative person, I don't have a creative bone in my body, that is incorrect. We're all creative. It's just that most of us are creating a reality that we don't want from our unprocessed wounds.
Wow. Yes. And it's so important that we learn how to shine a light on our darkness to find the color in our journey, because there
Yeah.
is so much color within our journey. And it's my true belief that we all came to this planet for a reason, to support our collective or the planet or the animals or whatever we are pulled towards supporting for the betterment of the future and the creation of this new earth, and the creation of really moving into the love consciousness. And we do that by really understanding, okay, well, where did I come from? What are these wounds teaching me? What's this darkness teaching me? Because my belief is we are a soul having a human experience, and we come to this planet and we choose our family and where we're going to be born and our name, and that, like, even down to the time that we're
Yeah.
born. And this
Yeah.
is why we have our astrological shot signs, our human design, our numerology, the Vedic teachings,
Yeah.
like whatever we are pulled to like delve into deeper to understand ourselves. And once we have that understanding of, okay, well, I chose this life, I am a
Yeah.
creator. Well, what is the fact that, I'll use my example. What is the fact that my sister never wanted a relationship with me? What is
Yeah.
that trying to teach me? And
Yeah.
now I understand, because I've been healing and I'm very like close to like shutting that wound up. But now I understand that I'm here for the sisters because of my wound of not having sisterhood. I'm here for the
Yeah.
sisters. And we've all got these different reasons why we're
Mm.
here. And I like what you mentioned earlier is like your belief in the power that you've come back to is love, because really and
Mm.
truly that is it as well. And I
Mm.
completely agree with your viewpoint on it. Is everything comes back to love, because under any negative emotion, under any negative experience, there's all love is like this kind of seedling of it that's covered by something, that's covered by
Mm.
something, because of
Mm.
our perspective and experience and stories that's happened. So yeah, I'd love for
Yeah.
you to expand on that.
Ooh, I love it. No, I'm just thinking, my friend, as you're speaking, I'm so excited for this podcast journey that you're going on, because this chat is igniting me, and I'm just projecting all the other beautiful guests you're going to have. So I'm just grateful. So what I would add to that beautiful expression of love is love isn't just the seedling under it. Love is the solution. And what I mean by that is, I'll give an example. I'll give the example of what's happened in my life this week, as just to be very practical and just to make sure it's clear for everyone listening. I had a very intimate relationship in my life change unexpectedly, and it brought up a lot of rejection and abandonment wounds and some deep sadness and anger and judgment, all the shadows that you were just highlighting. And I could have very easily, and I did in moments, become those aspects, become the sadness, become the rejection wound, become the abandonment wound, and then project that onto the outside world, onto that person, onto my friends, my family, etc. But if we want to move on from that, if we want to awaken our gifts, as you said, if we want to heal, if we want to step forward in our light, we have to work out, okay, how do I alchemize these shadows? How do I soothe that inner child wound? How do I support that shadow back into the light? And the answer is love, right? And I don't just mean like the airy fairy compassionate love. Yes, it's that. But I also mean the masculine love of doing the work and the practical devotional soothing of those aspects, right? As an even more practical example, what that might look like is doing a Ho'oponopono prayer, right? I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. It might look like breathing into that sadness, that anger that you feel in your body and saying, I love you. It might mean instead of acting from the fear and the pain of those shadows, you ask, what would love do? And then you make that choice instead of from the shadow. So it's using love in a very actionable and soothing way like that.
Love that. And it brings up the word reparenting for me,
Yep.
because that's what we get to do to really move towards our fullest expression, our highest truth. And the reason that we came here is to reparent ourselves in the way that we needed, that we didn't necessarily get, not because of fault from our own parents. It's, they had traumas that they didn't have the tools to deal with, so they
Yep.
unconsciously passed it down to us. But the way that we stop doing that, and the way that we break these generational curses and change the trajectory for our children, is by
Yep.
learning the tools and taking on the resources from people like yourself and myself and other New Earth leaders to learn how to reparent ourselves. And yes, a part of that is the love, is the understanding, is the compassion, is the acceptance of the feminine aspects of things.
Mm.
But then there's also the love in the reparenting of the doing of,
Yes.
okay, well, if I wish to mold myself into the future vision of myself that I have, I can't just sit here and wait for it. I
Yeah.
get to step into that version now. So first
Yeah.
off, who is that version? And second off, what does that version do on a daily basis? Like, how do they eat? How do they look after themselves? Do they work out? Do they get out in nature? Like, what kind of things are they learning? And by actually doing that, because most of the time people are like, oh, I'd really want that. I really want that. I'd really love that. But they're not doing the things to
Yeah.
get there because they've been trained for this whole instant gratification way of living, and not been taught the power of the long-term gratification and holding on to that vision, and also the fulfillment in putting the work in.
Yeah. Yes. And but I would add to that person that, because I agree, 'cause I see this all the time, as I'm sure you do, people not making that choice to do the work. It's it is that instant gratification, and it's a trauma response. And what I mean by that is it's so much easier to stay in the safe, the familiar, the secure of those patterns. Of, let's just use one, right? Let's just use the victim of the person that was rejected, the person that was abandoned, that was me, right? That I experienced this week. It's so much easier for me to stay in the person that feels the sadness, feels the anger, because that gets attention. Right. I was texting my mum and she was texting me back and saying, how can I help you? I love you. I'm here for you. What do you need? That's energy, right?
Yeah.
That's giving power to the current mask of illusion, of fear, of pain that I have on. So that's going to continue, right? That's why, because I have compassion for these people that are staying in this, because that's why it's continuing. But this is where the courage of the spiritual path comes in, right? The courage to step out into the unknown, right? And that might mean asking for support, right? Hiring a coach, hiring a mentor, hiring that book, doing the thing, and realizing just because it's safe, familiar, and comfortable doesn't mean it's your baseline state, right? Doesn't mean it's your reality where you get to tap into your greatest potential. And the last thing I'll say is, how do we know we're in that? Right? A lot of us are like, okay, but I feel great right now. how do I know I'm in these wounds? How do I know I'm in these shadows and these masks? Well, my answer to that is look at your life, right? Do you have the relationship that you think you deserve? Do you have the business abundance that you deserve? Do you have the physical health that you deserve? And if the answer is no, there are some things that you need to do. There's some confidence that you need to embody.
Yes, yes, yes. I absolutely love that response. Thank you so much for that. And it's really true. Like we get what we are. You mentioned earlier, like how our external reality is simply you said projection, I say reflection. It's the same pretty much, but it's true. Like our external reality is a reflection of our internal reality. So
Yeah,
when we don't love ourselves, when we don't see ourselves as worthy, then we're not going to treat our body and our mind right, and we're not going to fuel our body and our mind with the things that are going to
yeah,
benefit us.
yeah,
And when we don't respect and honor ourselves, and when we don't choose ourselves, then we're setting that standard for the relationships in our life as well. Because whatever triggers that we may have, whatever boundaries that we may have, if we're not honoring them and respecting them and communicating them effectively, then the other person, A, is not going to know, and B is going to overstep them. So it's finding that courage, as you mentioned, to really step onto the path of choosing self. And
yeah,
in my experience and opinion, that is the true spiritual path. It's choosing self over and over and over again
yeah,
when time is hard, when times especially are hard, and going within and always coming back to love and really
yeah,
learning to get out of the head, which is where many of us reside, and really learning to understand when the ego's at play and bullying us and saying all of this stuff to keep us in that known and keep us in that familiar. Because even if we may be uncomfortable, even if we may get angry and sad and upset, we know we're safe because we're still alive. And it's really learning how to befriend our ego in that sense, because it's not bad, it's there to protect us. But it's like, hey, like this isn't serving me anymore. Like I want to live happy and healthy and in like a full state of love. So stop bullying me and keeping me small. Really learning how
yeah,
to expand into that love.
yeah. And it's beautiful, Mel. That was beautifully expressed. And another image that I would add to this, it's dropping from the head into the heart, as you highlighted, but then bringing that heart back up into the head. And what I mean by that is, as you just wonderfully expressed, the ego is not the problem. It's what we are projecting through the ego, right? In my book, I refer to it as the unhealed ego, right? We want to have an integrated ego. We want to have a balanced ego. We want to have an ego that's expressing our love and our light rather than our unprocessed inner child ancestral wounds, right? So it's dropping from the head into the heart so we can actually come back into what is our greater awareness, our greater state of consciousness. But then once we're in the heart, bringing that love back up into the unprocessed, unhealed ego components that need it. Because this is where spiritual bypassing comes in, right? This is, I see it in myself, right? It's so easy for me. Let's keep using the example that I've experienced this week of noticing an inner child wound of abandonment. And then I'll drop into my meditation, drop into my heart, and I'll feel great. I've connected to my divinity. But then it'll be so easy for me to forget about that inner child wound. I'll just, oh, that didn't happen. I'll just stay here in the bliss. But we need to make the choice once we're in the bliss, once we're in the love, to apply that love to that aspect of self that needs it, to that aspect of us that is still in pain, right? Because unless we do that, that thing will keep coming up. Just because we've ignored it, as we've highlighted here many times today, doesn't mean it's gone. It'll just come back in a different lover, in a different friend, in a different child that we have.
I love that. And the lesson will always come until we learn the lesson. It just
Yep.
keeps repeating. It's the pattern. And that's where the essence of self-awareness gets to come in when it comes to our lives, and the patterns that we keep experiencing whether it be in our career, our relationships, home life, whatever that may be, to really take our power back and say to ourselves, well, I'm the only common denominator in this repeating situation with different people. So, what is it about me that gets to be healed in this? And where do I get to go to do this healing? And typically, from my experience, it comes from childhood between the ages of 7 to around 14 of something that's happened standalone or something that's happened on a repeated level that we get to shift within our body, because trauma not only gets stored within our conscious memory, a lot of the time trauma gets stored within our physicality and our body when it comes to the energetics and the emotions that we've suppressed. So yeah, what's your experience on that and like shifting the emotions out of our physicality?
Oh, again, you're hitting all my beautiful love points here today, my friend. I love it. So first of all, I'd recommend people read the beautiful book. I'll give two books here, actually, two resources. The Body Keeps Score by Bezel van der Kolk, and When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, right? These, in my experience, they're Bibles for this topic that you're hitting on of how, and I would, again, lovingly challenge you. You said, some of the time the body holds on to these wounds, these unprocessed traumas. And I would say it's actually most of the time, just in my experience, because the body tells the story of our lives. The body is the last place, in my experience, that a spiritual, energetic, emotional, and mental wound will show up. And for most of us, we're not dealing with our challenges mentally and emotionally and spiritually, as we've highlighted many ways today. So what's going to happen? It's going to show up as that dis-ease, that cancer, that hyperthyroidism, that physical heartache, that sinking of the stomach, that sexual, challenge, that impotence, that all the things. And there's so much we can teach about this, but the important thing to see first is that's not happening to you, right? Each of those physical symptoms is your beautiful body giving you a sign of what is needed, right? It's your body saying, hey, look at me. Look at me so you can come back into what? Come back into balance, right? And this brings up another limiting belief that's so important to see in relation to this is our baseline state is not one of disease. It's not one of suffering. It's not one of chronic issues in any part of our body. Our baseline state is ease. Our baseline state is bliss. Our baseline state is homeostasis. So in reference to the body keeping score with trauma, what this starts to show us is that any physical imbalance is a beautiful invitation to bring in your mindful awareness and ask, what is going on here? What do I need to see? What do I need to feel? What do I need to release? And that's a really good start.
Ah, I just love this. This conversation is fantastic, seriously. And it's true, like our body is always giving us messages, whether it be through the physical ailments that we are experiencing or the emotional cues that are coming up. Like the reason that we go into dis-ease is because it's a message from our body or our mind that, hey, something's wrong here, let's come back. And again, we've been taught to give our power away to other people. So straight away, when something comes up, we go to the doctor rather than going within to really kind of
Yeah.
understand where things are coming from. And don't get me wrong, like the doctor and the Western way of treating, there is a place for it. There is a place for it, but not to the extent, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that it's happening right
Yeah.
now.
Can I share a story, Mel, to highlight this exact thing that you're talking about? It's it's so important that we go to the deeper level, right? And the deeper level, in my experience, is always at least emotional, at best spiritual. And the example that I give here, this is in my book as well. This lady I was working with, last year or the year before. She had chronic pain from the amount of food that she was eating. She'd gained so much weight, and she didn't understand where it all was coming from. And she was taking all this medication. She was obese. She was overweight, very unhappy. And I asked her the question. I asked her, when did this start? When did you notice this weight gain begin? And she said very simply, when my daughter passed away, when the love of my life, my daughter, left this realm. And I asked her in that moment to tune in, right? Like we're highlighting here, to go a bit deeper than the food, the physical layer. And I asked her, how do you feel when you think about this beautiful being in your world not being here anymore? And she said, I feel empty. And then I asked her, do you think and feel there is a connection between the amount of food that you've been trying to consume and eat and this empty feeling, this emotionally empty feeling? And she said, yes, 100%. And that was the first time, and I get goosebumps sharing the story, right? I always do. That was the first time she'd made that connection. That was the first time she'd actually paused for a moment and asked herself emotionally, and I would say spiritually, what do I need? What's going on here? And she got an answer. I created the space and provided the prompts, but it was her knowing, right? It was her intuitive download that she got. So, that story highlights many things. But the thing I just want to express for people listening is it shows that if we just stop for a moment and ask ourselves at the deepest layer, what do we actually need right now? The answer 99% of the time won't be the food, won't be the sex, won't be the drug, won't be the external thing that we're losing ourselves in. It'll be something internally that we can give ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to highlight what you said there is the answer is within. We all have the answers within ourselves, but because of this training that we've been given to give our power away and to always seek outside of ourselves for the answers and for the guidance, we tend to seek outside of ourselves. And this is the power of the space that coaches and mentors and guides give, because yes, there are some coaches out there that mix teaching and guidance into their way of doing things. But it really comes down to having that spaciousness and asking the right questions to bring out the answers that you already have within you. You know you have it, but because of this, well, you may not know you have it, but like really like deeply it's there. But because of this way of living and life that we've been going through, this fast pace, like go, 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 do, we don't slow down to go within. We don't slow down to think. And this really is that's the spiritual path. It's like slow down, go within, ask yourself the questions, meditate, chill out, rest. It doesn't, there's a song I recently, a couple of days ago, I went to a friend's birthday gathering. We were singing around the fire, and amazing, beautiful, brilliant musicians and artists came out and shared their song, very heart-centered songs. And one of my brothers, it's actually the birthday boys. I'm going to bring him out on the podcast later. But he sang a song, and part of the lyrics was, "It doesn't have to be this hard. Everything's okay when it comes straight back to the heart." And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Another book I'll throw out for people. I love empowering people with resources and books to read, because it's not about us, it's about empowering you, as you're saying. Another book is called, two books by Deepak Chopra, Abundance and Affluence. Very similar name, but just look up Abundance and Affluence, two separate books, same idea. And in the book on affluence, Deepak Chopra describes the many characteristics of the unified field of love that we are, or the quantum field, or the one mind, which is God, another name for God that we've been speaking about. And it gives all these characteristics. And one of the characteristics, in reference to what you're saying, is simplicity, right? One of the baseline states of our deepest essence is simplicity, right? So whenever you find your moment, you're in a moment of you're pushing uphill, right? Life feels so hard, it feels so difficult, things keep going wrong. It's in that moment you can remind yourself you're not on your soul path, right? You're not connected to your presence. You're doing something because you think you should, or someone said something, and now you're trying to create this ego mask. So just the surrender of that taps you back into your actual essence.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of really coming home to ourselves and understanding our true essence underneath the masks and underneath the expectations and underneath the layers of societal and cultural conditioning. Because we're all so very unique and brilliant, and we all have so much medicine and magic within us that has just been smothered by what other people expect of us and how
Mm.
we're expected to be and what we're expected to do and have because of society and the culture and the fact that we're a man or a female and all of that stuff. And once we truly learn and have the courage to come
Yeah.
back home, to come back to ourselves, that's when
Yeah.
life truly does get magical.
Yeah. And it's courage, because we've talked about that today in one way, but it's also another way to describe it is it's showing up for yourself, right? I don't believe that we need to do anything. What I mean by that is if our greatest, deepest state is unconditional, is love, but it's unconditional love. So what that means is I am loved either way, no matter what choice that I make. However, the essence that I am is in a world that you just described. It's in a world where all of these things are bombarded at us as soon as I walk out my door, right? So yes, I'm loved either way, but I'm very easily going to forget my essence. I'm very easily going to forget what my truest state is, as we've described in numerous ways today. So we need to show up for ourselves in the practices that we have that we use to remember what we are, right? And this is going to be different for everyone, right? For me, it's breath work. For me, it's meditation. For me, it's grounding outside in the sun, with all my clothes off, just getting the sun on my skin and, doing all that. But it's going to be different for all of us, but we need to have those practices, because then we'll get lost. We'll get lost in all those things. So it's showing up for ourselves as well.
Definitely. And I love how you say it's different for everyone, because it is. And there's so many people out there, these gurus, whatever they want to call themselves, are like, you need to do this, you need to do that, and like giving people like step-by-step guides on doing things. And yes, for some people it works. But what we really get to remember is that we're all very different and we all have a different flow and a different way of doing it. And my encouragement to anyone listening who is wanting to walk that path, or who is already on that path but is a bit lost and a bit overwhelmed and like, oh my god, I don't know what to do, I'm being bombarded from all different directions, is really feed into what feels good for you and understand that throughout your growth and throughout your deepening into self, the seasons are going to change and you're going to incorporate different things into your practices. Like 2 years, I don't even think a year ago, I didn't have an altar a year ago. Now I have an altar and I go to my altar every day.
Yeah.
And like there were points in my journey because of the way that my life was, where my morning routine was just 15 minutes. Whereas now my morning routine can be anywhere between like 1 to 3 hours, depending on how I feel
Mm.
and the flow within me. But the important thing is that I have a morning routine that incorporates things that resonate with me, that feels good
Mm.
to me. And then when it doesn't feel good, I just don't do it anymore because it
Mm.
doesn't feel good. And I say this a lot. The aim of the game is to feel good. That is the aim. And this is where we all get to go. And it's through my experience anyway, the more I've followed my intuitive calling and my heart and what sets my soul on fire and what makes me feel good, the better it gets, essentially.
I love it. What a mic drop moment, my friend, to come to the end of this chat. I love it. Only thing I could add is there's no limit, right? There's no ceiling, right? As soon as you think there's a ceiling, that's the next limiting belief that you need to bust, right? Because another characteristic of our essence, other than simplicity, is unboundedness, right? There's no limit, right? You are unconditional love. I'll keep coming back to that. So the answer is always yes. So when you ask the question, is there more to this? The answer is yes.
Yes, and say yes to life. Be a yes man for sure. Okay, so as we wrap up, thank you so much, Harrison. This has been fantastic,
You're so
and
welcome.
I'm very much looking forward to bringing you back out. I know that that's gonna be a thing. So thank you. But three questions that I'm asking all of my guests to end the show is before we close, what is coming up for you in respects to the encouragement for our listeners right now?
Some final encouragement on top of all of the other beautiful encouragement is, oh, okay, I'll share this. This came up before and I'll add it in now. So another little image that I really want to leave people with around this godliness that's inside of us that we've spoken about today is a beautiful puzzle, a giant puzzle with all these beautiful, unique puzzle pieces. And I would describe the awakening process as there's three stages of it. And this was taught to me by one of my mentors. The first stage is the puzzle that we are, that is outside of the puzzle itself. We feel like we're separate, we're isolated, we're alone, we're in the matrix, we're asleep, right? That's the first stage. The second stage is the puzzle piece is connected into the oneness, right? That person starts to awake and they're connected and they're part of the bigger picture. They're a part of the allness, the God that is everything. But then the third stage, and this is what I want to leave people with, is seeing that even though that you are a part of the oneness, there is still these individual grooves that is unique to every single person. And this is what I want to encourage people to tune in here to today is what is your uniqueness, right? You aren't here just to be a part of the oneness. You're not just here to be that beautiful, worthy, complete wholeness that you already are. You are here to expand the oneness. You are here to be that unique puzzle piece and add more to everything. So ask yourself that question. What is that moreness that you want to add?
Yes, I love that so much. Thank you. That was so beautiful. Next question. What is your vision for the future of this planet and essentially the new Earth that we are navigating towards?
I love it. All the big questions. So I would add, so everything I just said, and it's people regaining their sovereignty. And when I say that, I mean in all the ways, right? Through, you spoke before about education, through the finance system, right? I'm going through my own process at the moment of separating myself from the finance system. It is health system, regaining back our health sovereignty. It's coming back into our own business sovereignty. So it's when I visualize the new earth, I see many things, but I see sovereign individuals in their holistic being in all metrics. And I see them as part of local communities that are building newness together, right? As their sovereign little individuals coming together as sovereign communities, adding to Mother Earth and her evolution.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And lastly, what is the role that you are playing when it comes to navigating towards the new Earth? And how can people find you and work with you?
Well, firstly, Mel, I just want to say I'm really grateful for this conversation, and I'm so honored that you messaged me and asked me to be on your show and to be one of your first guests. So thank you for this space and thank you for this beautiful dialogue today. I see you in your light, and your light brings out mine. So just thank you for that. So my role in many ways is awakening the cosmic love antenna that is each of us, right? And what that means, that is the name of my show, it's the name of my coaching, it's the name of my book that I'll talk about in a second. But very simply, what a cosmic love antenna is that individual puzzle piece that I spoke about a second ago, awakening back into their higher power, which is love, and then radiating their unique frequency of love out into the world. So my role is to be a divine mirror of love, to walk people back home to that truth, right? To walk people back home to activating that truth. And for me, the tools are changing all the time, right? From inner child work to ancestral healing. I do a lot of work with the chakra systems. I do a lot of channeling and meditative journeys. But that fundamental mission will always stay the same. It's walking back people home to that activated love frequency. And if people want to work with me, you can go to Amazon. You can check out my book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna. You can also go to my website, Harrison Meagher, that's Meagher spelled MEAGHER.com. And you can also find me on all social media at Harrison Meagher on all the platforms.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Harrison. I'm going to be putting all of your links below in the show notes as well. So if anyone's interested in exploring Harrison's work or contacting Harrison, then the links will be below. Thank you so much, Harrison, for coming out. This has been such an activating and beautiful conversation. I have received many a truth chill over my bodies through your voice and through your channeling, and I'm very much looking forward to bringing you out again. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Mel. Sending love.
Thank you so much for listening. We will see you on the next episode.
Know that you're not alone. We are ready.